And just like that, we're back from commercial break, guys. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's your boy Sly Lancy, and in today's video, Sly Cooper, we're going to be reviewing Sly 2, Band of Thieves. Now, in the first video, we reviewed the first ever Sly Cooper game, Sly Cooper and the Thieves Raccooners, and I thought it was a fantastic start to the series. But how does the sequel add up? So, like last time, we're going to review everything in the 4 different categories that I have, and then my final conclusion of the game, and then what my final score is for the game in general. So, if you guys are ready, let's get into it. Sly 2, Band of Thieves. Okay, so for those of you who didn't get a chance to watch my Sly 1 review, I'm going to put a little tab at the top of the video for you guys to check it out. And once you watch that, you can jump right into this. Unless you just want to skip around and just watch different reviews, then I won't be mad. So, the development for Sly 1. Because Sly 1 was a great game through and through, you know, the developers decided they wanted to make a second game long before they even started working on a second game. So, but the problem was, at the time, the sales for Sly were not as high as some of the other games that were coming out, like I said before, with Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank. It did sell enough units to get the coveted greatest hits mark on PS2, even though we all know it's just for promotion purposes. The developers were still intended on making a second game. And Sony greenlit the second game with no issue, however, because with a small company like Sucker Punch, you know, it's literally a small risk-reward ratio. So, like, Sony literally had no problem giving Sucker Punch the green light to make another game. Because if there's anything that we learn about Sucker Punch is that they always tend to overachieve. For whatever's thrown at them, they always overachieve in any of the circumstances they're thrown into. Which is one of the reasons why I love Sucker Punch. Given, you know, the infamous series and all the other games that they made. Again, Sucker Punch, I love you guys, I always will. And this was also at a time where companies were not overly greedy about making money, but instead just, you know, trusting in their IPs to do a great job and then trusting them to make the money for them. You know, Sly 2, you know, the development for another Sly game was always going to be on the horizon at the time. So, after seeing what worked and what didn't for Sly 1, Sucker Punch had 2 years to get Sly 2 up to snuff. And on September 14th, 2004, Sly 2 and Band of Thieves came out. And while this game did much better sales-wise than Sly Cooper and the Thieves Raccooners did, how did it fare gameplay-wise and story-wise? Well, let's find out. But first, let's look at the cover of this game and see what we can take away from it. I like this cover a lot. I really love this cover. The colors aren't oversaturated or undersaturated. They all blend really well together. And the theme is still mysterious like the last one, but it's done much better. Like, I really like this color a lot. And the silhouette at the bottom is just icing on the cake for me. Definitely better than the covers for the first game by far. Now, we move on to the story. After the defeat of Clockwork from the first game, Carmelita informed Interpol of the danger of Clockwork and had an Interpol SWAT team coming to pick over the leftover parts and stash somewhere safe. Cause if you remember from the cutscene at the end of the credits from Sly 1, Clockwork's death may be a myth. So, knowing full hand the danger of Clockwork and what he could bring to the world, Sly, Bentley, and Murray worked together to concoct a plan to steal back the Clockwork parts so they could figure out how to destroy them for good. So here we are, 2 years later in Monaco at the Cairo Museum of Natural History, where apparently Clockwork's entire body is on display. Smart move, Interpol. Very smart move indeed. Sly and the rest of the Cooper gang break in and attempt to steal Clockwork's body frame. However, much to their surprise, they learn from Carmelita and her new partner in crime, Constable Neela, keep her in mind later, that someone already stole the Clockwork parts, much to their surprise. And while Carmelita accuses Sly of stealing the Clockwork parts, Neela actually hints that there may be another gang that pulled off this heist instead. A gang known as the Claw Gang. Sly intercepts this information and escapes with Bentley and Murray before Carmelita and Interpol can catch them. Now the task is at hand. Track down each Claw Gang member and steal back the Clockwork part on deck until you got all the Clockwork parts so you can destroy them once and for all, and Clockwork can never come back. Okay, so now first we start off in Paris with Dimitri, a silky smooth lizard who runs a nightclub and is an art forger. He's holding on to the clockwork tail feathers and is using them to print money illegally. So, for us, we have to figure out how to shut down his counterfeiting project and steal the clockwork tail feathers. Next up, we have Rajan, a spice king aka drug king that resides in India. Rajan is a very easily ill-tempered person, and the spice that he's taking in and selling is only making his temperament much more unpredictable. He has the clockwork wings, and he's showing them off in his ballroom party in order to show off his prestige in the black market. So, in what is without a doubt one of the greatest chapters in Sly Cooper history, Sly and the gang has to figure out how to pull off a heist in the middle of a ballroom party. Not easy, but the Cooper gang is up for the challenge, using lots of sorts of misdirection and misscheming plans to destroy the turrets, destroy any extra security, and distract even Interpol's finest right in front of their eyes as we steal the clockwork wings from behind and escape with them intact. And by stealing the clockwork wings, we ruined Rajan's prestige in the black market because now everybody's getting under arrest by Interpol, who blew their cover afterwards. Escaped and now fully fledged angry, Rajan retreats back to his spice temple, which the Cooper gang intercepts, and they learn that Rajan has another clockwork part, which is the first time we'll have to deal with a villain twice in a Sly Cooper video game. So, in this case, Rajan has Clockwork's heart, and it was with the heart that Rajan's spice temple was going to continue to pump spice at a highly illegal rate. So going from a beautiful palace to a quite dark and dim jungle, we have to figure out how to steal back the clockwork heart and escape intact. And the story in this chapter tends to become stale a bit, but it's until the very end of the chapter where we get a very, very juicy part of the story, and how this point of the story saved the whole game, in my opinion. Bentley comes up with a plan to flood Rajan out so they can steal the clockwork heart and leave. And Neela comes to help aid the Cooper gang in the process. Neela's been helping us on this journey back in Paris and the first section of India, telling us what we should do and what we need to do and how she can't get in without warrants, but how Sly can get in instead. You know, Neela's been helping us throughout this entire chapter. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, Neela betrays us and leaves us to fight Rajan by ourselves. With Sly being knocked out from Rajan's hit, Murray still manages to defeat Rajan, but we look at the top, and just when we think that Neela's gonna help us again, she brings Carmelita and the Contessa over to arrest all of us, and this seems like the end of our heroes. But then another twist happens. Neela ends up betraying Carmelita by saying that she was in cahoots with the Cooper gang the whole time. What? This is fantastic. This is a great point in the story that prevents Sly 2 from becoming stale and gives it a fresh story and fresh, innovative, way of going about the story. With this piece of information, the Contessa and Neela doesn't hesitate to arrest Carmelita, Sly, and Murray, with Bentley looking on in horror, realizing that he's on his own for the first time, and he has to figure out how to break Sly, Murray, and Carmelita out of prison. So, after a sleepless week of data crunching, Bentley heads over to Prague, where we go to Contessa's fortified jail prison. So, despite being outclassed and despite being in an area that is by far the most frightening area in Sly Cooper history, Bentley manages to break Sly out of jail, and with the help of Sly, Bentley and Sly are able to break Murray out of jail later. And with all three of them back together again, they all go to chase down Contessa, but Contessa escapes from the prison and heads back to her fortress. And thanks to the little reconnaissance missions that Bentley had did himself while Sly and Murray were in jail, we realize that the Contessa's temperament is actually far more sinister than what even Interpol could have imagined. She's a secret member of the Claw Gang, and was the hypnosis treasurer of the group. So it turns out that the Contessa was actually hypnotizing ex-criminals to reveal where they stashed their loot at so that she can take it for herself and become a billionaire off that. The Cooper gang, already looking for revenge, then also learned that Neela is in the area too, and she was looking to pull off a full-fledged war with the Contessa due to her corruption from Interpol. So, like a meal from Burger King, the Cooper gang was getting a 2-for-1 deal in this process. A chance at revenge for the two people who caused them a lot of pain and heartache the last couple of missions. But then also we have another problem on our hand, because now we have to rescue Carmelita, who's about to get brainwashed into taking the fall for Contessa at Interpol. We also deal with the supernatural and the surreal in this chapter too, along with the already creepy atmosphere that we're dealing with from the last world that we're in. So with all these different variables thrown at us, somehow, some way, the Cooper gang still manages to pull out on top. They defeat the Contessa, they steal the clockwork eyes which she had been using for her hypnotic treatments. They also get a little bit of revenge on Neela, not completely, but a little bit, and then they save Carmelita as well. But with Interpol closing in, and 4 of them being fugitives from Interpol, Sly, Bentley, Murray, and Carmelita, yes, Carmelita, all run away from Interpol while Neela stays back to arrest Contessa for her corruption from Interpol. With all this craziness going on, the Cooper gang realizes they need to lay low for a while due to all this chaos happening. Then, after about like a few weeks of laying low, the Cooper gang then gets back to action. Next up, they have to deal with John Bassan, a log chopper from the 1800s who was frozen in time and then brought back to life thanks to global warming. He resides in Canada, and his main goal at hand is chopping away all the logs and trees in the area and building it for his own little empire. Also, let's not forget to mention the fact that this man is also transporting all the spice that Rajan made so that he can transport it throughout all the world with his Iron Horse trains. Yeah. On top of that, this dude has 4 freaking clockwork parts. What? Again, guys, if I ever redo my top 10 villains list, John Bassan is definitely making the top 10 list because I feel like I underrated him a lot in my initial review of him. For those of you who didn't watch the videos, I'll leave a tab at the top of the video or maybe a link in the description. But yeah, John Bassan, by far one of the most menacing villains in Sly Cooper history, and he definitely is underrated a lot by a lot of Sly fans, I feel. So, but yeah. So, the Cooper gang has to stop the Iron Horse trains. They managed to do that, and then, again, like Rajan and Contessa, John Bassan also has a second world he's hiding out in. And in this second world, he has a little contest called the Lumberjack Games, in which he's putting up a bid to sell away the talons. You know, after using both lungs and the stomach to power his Iron Horse trains, you know, he's using the talons as a prize off his staff, his wooden staff, and he's willing to give up the talents to anybody who can beat him in the Lumberjack Games. But even when the Cooper gang cheat, John Bassan is cheating his way right back into the contest because John Bassan is threatening the guards, saying that if they even dare give him a score less than 10, they're gonna get their heads chopped off by him. Case in point, anybody who's played this game, remember the moose head that's in one of John Bassan's cabins? It literally took me a minute, but part of me believes that the developers did this in a secret way of telling the viewers how dangerous and menacing this guy is. So after many attempts to try and cheat our way to win the contest, John Bassan has had enough of the Cooper gang trying to cheat, and he knocks him out with the talons. He then stores him away in his basement for interrogating probably later, which again begs the question, how did this game get only an E rating? Like seriously, there are so many dark elements in this game that just flies over your heads when you're a kid, but when you're grown up, you realize there's a lot of dark elements to this. Anyway, back to the video. Bentley manages to escape the section that they're trapped in, and he manages to defeat John Bassan all by himself, which again brings up the nickname the OG Bentley. And then he manages to break Sly and Murray out of their little prison, and then the 3 of them manage to escape to the silo battery that they were planning on hiding out in before Arpeggio's Blink comes to pick up the battery. Now, we're in the final section of this game. Arpeggio, the man behind all this chaos and created this masterfully planned out plan that I will get into in a quick second. But before we do that, guess who shows up for the party? Yep. Neela, that no good BITCH came back and is working with Arpeggio to bring Clockwork back to life. And then after a bit of chaos that happens, in which Sly tries to stop the Clockwork frame from being restored, but then ends up being restored anyway, Arpeggio then lays out to us the entire plan in front of Sly and the Cooper gang listening in from the radio. Arpeggio's plan was beyond any of our comprehensions at the time. Just when we thought that the other Claw gang members were just using the parts for their own trivial plans and purposes, Arpeggio was actually using them for his advantage. Everything that the Claw gang was doing, Arpeggio orchestrated to such perfection. Arpeggio knew that the Clockwork frame, in order for it to work and meld back together again and be restored back to its immortality self, needed one thing: hatred. How was Arpeggio gonna get that hatred? Much to Sly's questioning, like, bro, like, you can't make people hate, like, for real. Well, it turns out, according to Arpeggio, you can force people to hate, because Rajan was making spice, and John Bassan was distributing the spice all over the country, and Dimitri and the Contessa was feeding people the spice in the club and at the prison. As shown by Murray when he was locked up in prison by the Contessa, and was forced to eat spice that was covered on his food, the spice made Murray very angry and susceptible to hypnosis. And this is where Arpeggio got the idea of hypnotizing everybody in Paris who was eating spice covered on the food. And how was he gonna get that power though, to like hypnotize people with his blimp? Turns out, remember how we was in Canada? What's in Canada? The Northern Lights. And he was collecting the Northern Light energy to power his blimp so that he could hypnotize people. I tell you, this whole plan was just, it's just, you don't think this stuff through like that. This is like a years-long plan. And then, with John Bassan transporting all the spice in the different areas of the world, and he was collecting hate not just from Paris, he was just collecting it from different parts of the world. He's just going back to Paris so that he can collect enough hate to finish off the job and rebirth Clockwork. Man, Sly 2, how did this game get an E rating? So, just when it seems like Arpeggio's plan was about to come to fruition and he was about to rule the world, he forgot one little detail which I don't know for other people, but for me made me mad. Neela betrays him and kills him, and Neela becomes Clockler. Oh my gosh. I will talk about the Neela plot point later, but for now, let's just get back to the story. So, it's after realizing how dangerously close they are to realizing that Clockwork's coming back to life, the Cooper gang does everything they can to put an end to Clockler before she becomes immortal. Also, we get the help from Carmelita, because Carmelita's aware of the danger too, and plus she knows she wants a shot at Neela. So, it's after a very crazy series of events between destroying the blimp, finding Neela in the air with a helicopter and on her wings, that we managed to defeat Neela in Paris right before the Hypnotic Light show can start. Then, it's afterwards that the Cooper gang realized they need to get that hate chip and destroy it for good before it kicks back up again. Bentley manages to get the hate chip, and just when we think that we finally won, Neela does one thing to leave her mark on the Cooper gang for good. She cripples Bentley. Murray's not strong enough, and Murray's unfortunately not strong enough to open up the beak in time, and Bentley is paralyzed. Again, E rating? Just a E rating? Either way, the clockwork parts explode as the Cooper gang escapes, but the parts still remain intact for some bizarre reason. But then that's when they realize it's all in the hate chip. And with Carmelita, angry having missed a chance to get a few shots at Clockwork, takes the hate chip and smashes it with her foot. Clockwork then ages right before everyone's eyes, destroying the bird for good. Carmelita, then going back to the Cops and Robbers game, tries to arrest the Cooper gang, and Sly realizes that they are in no way, shape, or form for a fast getaway, with Bentley and Murray both being mentally and physically destroyed over the events of the entire game. So Sly instead offers himself if Carmelita lets Bentley and Murray walk, which she does allow. With Carmelita's name and reputation finally restored to Interpol, Sly, as usual, escapes from Carmelita in the slickest way possible, and we're back to cops and robbers. And that, my friends, is how Sly 2 ends. While Sly 1's story is great and memorable, I have no hesitance or regrets in saying that Sly 2's story is leagues ahead of Sly 1's story. What makes it stand out more? The more detailed and intricate plot. Sly 2 is as dark and as serious as it gets. Much like the first game, not even the E rating, again, the E rating does not do this game justice in how many stuff they get away with in here. If you thought you paid the price in Sly 1, that ain't nothing to how you pay the price in Sly 2. Sly 2 does not play around at all whatsoever, regardless if you're the hero, a villain, or a neutral in this game. We see the Cooper gang pushed to their limits, being betrayed, kidnapped, captured, crippled, and even drugged. And even like I said before, with the villains and neutrals in this game too. We see characters get killed right in front of us. We see characters get used right in front of us. And it's all because of the prestige, the wealth, and the power that these clockwork parts bring to people. Multiple times in the story, there are just so many things that are just thrown at you. Just when you think you're winning the war against the Claw Gang, you actually lose to them a couple of times, thus keeping you more immersed in the story and actually making the victories that you earn afterwards much more rewarding. All the dark allegories and elements that make this game not only that much fun, but also much more enticing to play. This is an adult film disguised with kids' humor, and it's a near flawless story. And if I had to decipher the difference between Sly 1 and Sly 2's story, Sly 1 takes you to your destination, while Sly 2 takes you on a journey. And if there's any issue I have with Sly 2's story, it's the needless characterization, which again I'll talk about when we get to the art section, and who our final boss is at the very end. Okay, we move on to the gameplay section, and Sly 2, to no surprise, takes a major step in the gameplay. Again, I hate to keep comparing the two, but like Sly 1's gameplay was good, but the overcompensation of mini-games made it feel too out of place at times. But Sucker Punch instead decided to dial back on the mini-games in this game and focus more on the platforming, which was something that I complained about in Sly 1's review, and it worked greatly to the game's benefit. For starters, the health bar system, by far one of the best upgrades in this game, instead of the stupid one hit and you're dead life system. The game overs and mission fail screens are still just as entertaining as they were before, in fact much more entertaining, because they actually give you cutscenes this time as to what happened, not just the enemy gloating over you after they hit you. Say for example, Murray getting caught in the ballroom, or Bentley's helicopter getting destroyed while he's trying to get Sly out of jail. Another gameplay aspect to cover is the now free roam open hub worlds. No longer do we have to follow a straight linear path towards the objective. Again, this goes back to what I said. Sly 1 takes you to your destination, while Sly 2 takes you on a journey, and this is a prime example of that. And the best part is, instead, Sly 2, now using the open hub worlds, is not just for like open fun and play. You actually use missions in these open hub worlds. Missions like pickpocketing guards, trailing your target, stealing priceless treasure, and you know, it's just like all of those will involve using the hub world in some way, shape, or form. And along with the missions and the new treasure that we can find now, clue bottles return as well, allowing the player to explore the open hub world even more, and rewards the player for going out of the way of doing so. And even though there aren't as many mini-games as there were in the old game, Sly 2 still has mini-games, but this time they actually make a lot more sense. For example, using turrets to take down a helicopter to avoid detection from other guards makes a lot more sense than enemies trying to chase you down for trying to steal one of their treasure keys. And yes, even though on occasion we'll have a dud that comes along the way, like the stupid tank mission, overall this game focuses more on the platforming experience. My favorite types of platforming being climbing across your way off the Iron Horse train. Oh my gosh, the platforming to that is by far one of the greatest mechanics that this game and this whole series ever had to offer. I could keep gushing and gushing over Sly 2's gameplay as much as I did the story just a few moments ago, but I think it goes without saying that Sly 2's gameplay is the best gameplay we gotten so far. Sly so far. Okay guys, next up we got the art section, one of my favorite parts of doing any of these reviews for video games. So, again, I hate to continue to compare the two, but it's literally a night and day difference between Sly 1 and Sly 2. Sly 1's art is good, yes, but Sly 2's art jumps in quality, not just in the 2D cutscenes, but in the 3D game as well. The film noir comic book style motifs are still there, just much better quality this time around. Plus, there's more movements in the cutscene, making it feel more like a comic book. The colors also pop out at you more to the naked eye, making it more memorable to the viewer. I mean, shoot, even the atmosphere of the open hub worlds is great, because like you really feel these environments in Sly 2. You know, Dimitri's nightclub, it's a party, the music's bumping. Rajan's jungle, you know, it's mysterious, quiet, and you don't know what to expect out of it. Contessa's castle, having you know, being alone, Bentley being the weakest of the group, having to go through this scary ass area with nothing but gigantic vultures, wolves that shoot spiders out of their mouths, what the heck, and then the bats who will call for backup, and the scream is so freaking scary. And then you go John Bassan's area with all the cabins, the woods, the snow, feels like a cold January or December morning, then the bears that's in the area. And then Arpeggio's blimp, which by far is one of my favorite areas to explore, even though it's one of the most hated areas in the Sly community. But, you know, this all ties into how well Sly 2 did. If the atmosphere of the games is great, and how like the guards too. The guards are at some of the most well designed in this game as well, you know. As I stated before, with pretty much all of Contessa's guards are pretty much the most iconic out of this game, and then I would say Dimitri's guards too are just as iconic as well. So the illustration aspect of the art works great. What about the voice and sound performances? Well, for the most part, they all hold up pretty good, and I dare to say it's much better than Sly 1's. Sly 2's character performances are a step up. Everyone looks aged up after 2 years thanks to the much better character models and in-game and cutscenes. Also, the characterization for a lot of characters as well. Bentley and Murray being the best by far, but I'm taking it with a grain of salt because Murray's character was not my favorite in Sly 1. Sly and Carmelita also see upgrades in their performances as well. Sly being much more smoother in controls and the voice acting as well. Carmelita's voice acting, I personally find, is much better than the one in Sly 1. Even though I do miss the Latina accent that she has, I still think that it's much more smooth. It's not like she's reading off a script or reading it with no emotion whatsoever. But I'm not saying it's the best one we have by far. You know, it still leaves a lot to be desired. And again, keep this in mind because this is going to be a running gag in this series with Carmelita getting a new voice actor. Okay, so what about the villains? They all sound distinct. Some sound very scary. Some sound very strong. Some sound very, like menacing. It's just they all work well. Rajan is an ill-tempered drug kingpin. John Massan's an old log chopper from the 1800s. Contessa's an arrogant hypnotist posing as an agent for Interpol. Dimitri is far away the best character of the group thanks to his failed artist backstory and how he used that to become an art forger and nightclub owner. Arpeggio is a brilliant mastermind who single-handedly caused all the problems in Sly 2. And wait, there's one more character. Constable Neela. Okay. Neela is a very, very interesting one to talk about, because depending on the viewer, she can either be a hit or a miss. But here's how I feel about Neela. She's potential wasted in my opinion. For those who watch my favorite characters video, I love Neela, and her potential as a character could have been shot through the roof. But unfortunately, this game utterly destroyed that potential because literally she dies at the end. Now, Neela was someone that I saw more so as an anti-hero rather than a straight-up villain. Now, don't get me wrong, the betrayal to the Cooper gang in episode 3 saved Sly 2's story a lot and saved it from being stale and redundant. But to me, what they should have did was that at the end of the game, which is where the problem for me lies in, is that at the end of Sly 2, you keep Arpeggio the main villain and have him betray Neela, and just so that way Neela gets her comeuppance for betraying everyone else in the game. You know, so Arpeggio becomes the new Clockwork, and Neela, angry at Arpeggio betraying him, offers to help the Cooper gang. Sly refuses initially because for obvious reasons, but Neela really wants revenge on Arpeggio, and Sly reluctantly agrees to help Neela. They both reluctantly agree to help each other because there's a bigger evil they gotta deal with. Plus, for Sly, getting rid of Clockwork is all that matters to him at this point. So in conclusion, Arpeggio gets the chance to shine as a villain rather than being killed off straight away, while also giving Neela the comeuppance that she deserves for everything she caused in that game. I was really hoping for a lot more from Neela than just being a one-and-done character in this franchise. Her cadence to me is iconic in this series. She's mysterious, quiet, reserved, but yet deadly and dangerous. She can match Sly and Carmelita's capabilities. Plus, having her around in this series, in my opinion, gave the series much needed lore, giving the Cooper gang an Interpol a potential frenemy. Someone who they can, help, someone who can help them out, but also is out for her own selfish desires in a way. That's how I've always saw it. Plus, she could have also continued that potential love interest of being the love interest of Sly in this game, adding that layer of intensity to a rivalry with Carmelita already. I could go on and on about Neela's potential in this game, but I could do that for another video for anybody who's interested. So, that's as far as I'm concerned about, the art in this game. The illustration aspect is great, the best we got so far. The sound performances are also at their greatest so far, and aside from the potential that Neela could have had and should have had throughout this series, I still love her dearly. And to me, the art in Sly 2 is great. It's great voice-wise and art-wise and illustration-wise. Okay guys, the final category before we do the pros and cons and the score. The soundtrack. Now, the soundtrack to Sly 1 is cool in its own way, but it's very obvious the developers went all out in making Sly 2's soundtrack as memorable as possible. The composer this time around is Peter Meccano, who had a minor role in Sly 1's soundtrack, but it now has full throttle in Sly 2's soundtrack. Sly 2's soundtrack is more silky smooth, with yet crucially darker elements to it that make it stand out more to the casual viewer. The biggest difference between this game's soundtrack and the last one is that every theme feels very thiefy and sneaky as possible. This really feels like, we're on a heist and we gotta do a great job at stealing what we need to steal. On top of that, if every theme, even though we have like a certain theme for Rajan, a certain theme for Contessa, a certain theme for John Bassan, they all still sound like they're interconnected together, so that the theme of we're on a heist here is still there. It's not like over the top, overblown like how some of the ones in Sly 1. Where yes, they're all great soundtracks, but they don't tie in together very well for a cohesive game. They all sound like they're there for certain parts of the game, not tying to a bigger story at hand. That's why I always love Sly 2's soundtrack, and to me, it's easily the best soundtrack in the entire series, period. My favorite tracks in Sly 2 easily being the menu themes, the first and second one, both of them. The Dimitri's nightclub, I mean, come on. We knew that one was gonna make it. Neela's theme I also love a lot too. And of course I can't forget Cairo's museum theme either. Come on man. And that's as far as I can say about the soundtrack. I don't have too much to say about it. It's a great soundtrack, the best one in the series by far. Okay, so as far as the pros go for this game, there are just so many of them. I don't even think I could get to all of them the way I want to, or talk about it the way I want to, but I'm gonna still try anyway. So, for starters, the much improved gameplay. Sly 2's gameplay is without a doubt much better than Sly 1's gameplay, because the gameplay in Sly 2 is much more focused this time around. It doesn't require minigames that don't make any sense. It actually uses minigames to its advantage, and it does it in a smart way. So that's another plus. So that's one of the major pluses for this game. Also, the health system is much better than the life system. You know, you get attacked, you lose a bit of health, not like you die after every hit. You know, this is not Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog. Also, another pro to this game, the better story, better characterization, much better villains. And like, it kept you invested the entire time because the interactions between characters and how the story was being told and how it unfolded and how you had to piece the story together. Again, all major plus points for this game. Also, I really love the pickpocketing system. It adds more to that thief element that Sly is known greatly for. It's just a lot of the pluses in this game are just incredible to me. But if I had to pick my favorite plus from this game, I would definitely say the soundtrack has got to be the biggest plus up here, right next to the story. Cause like, there's just, the soundtrack just makes much more sense. It's not like, the soundtrack is not there to be there. It literally sounds thiefy. It sounds like you're a thief at the night and you gotta steal things in order to prevent another thing from happening. So again, great game overall. A lot of pros and pluses to it. Okay, so now, as far as I'm concerned about the cons or the negatives of this game, there really aren't that many to talk about actually, because Sly 2 corrected a lot of Sly 1's problems, but there's still a couple of problems here or there to talk about. So for starters, like I said earlier, the story limps at the end for me because I really did not like how they did Neela at the end of this game. And again, this is just a nitpick for my part. Everybody else can feel differently, but again, I just would have rather Neela stayed an ally to us. So that's why the ending limps for me. Up next, the inability to replay missions. I always found this weird, cause like in Sly 1 and Sly 3 and Sly 4, which we'll get to eventually, you know, like you could replay the missions all over again. So like, and you can replay certain missions that you want to do. That's the way in Sly 2, you don't have that option. Now, I understand that they did it because they wanted everybody to be more immersed in the story, but again, it just feels kind of like, you know, it just feels like a kind of like a lazy edit, I would ask. But again, you know, that's not a big gripe, you know, because the game's so short anyway. You can just replay the game over and over again just to get, you know, more out of the story that you want. Another problem I have with Sly 2 was that Sly sometimes isn't calibrated to the blue auras that he's supposed to be destined towards. Like, for example, like if I'm literally on a spiral point here and I want to get to a rope here, I'll jump and press the circle button, but instead of me landing on the rope that's right in front of me, Sly will instead jump on another spiral point that's about like 5 levels below where I wanted him to jump to. Doesn't happen a lot, but it gets annoying a lot. And this game, as I've seen from another Sly Cooper YouTuber who I watch a lot, Besop Gaming, points out a lot of glitches in this game. So if you guys haven't checked him out, be sure to check his videos out too. He does a lot of Sly Cooper videos. But yeah, the glitches in this game can be a bit annoying, even though they're fun to look for when you're just like free roaming the world and stuff. But again, if you're a hardcore gamer, this can really annoy you. Also, the last thing I will talk about is that the safes in the game, the items that you get from the safes are either hit or miss. You know, like for me, the voltage cane strike was literally the best item I got, and even then I don't use it too much. And all the other stuff, it's literally like you may use it once and then never again afterwards. So like, again, it's really like hit or miss with the saves. And that's it as far as negatives as I'm concerned. So, what's my overall review of Sly 2? Sly 2 is without a doubt the magnus opus of the entire series. The near perfect video game. The story is the best of all 4 games, the gameplay is the best it's been this time around, and some of the characters are at their peak performances here. Sly 2 is without a doubt one of the greatest PlayStation 2 games of all time. I'd say top 5, and I know that can be argued for a lot of people, but I think it's top 5 all time. So, what's the score I give Sly 2? Well, for the story, I give it a 10. For the gameplay, I give it a 9. For the art, I give it a 9. And for the soundtrack, I give it a 9. So the overall score for Sly 2 Band of Thieves is a 9 out of 10. Sly 2 is one of those rare forms of art that it's somehow much better than its predecessor, because for most things in the world, a movie, video game, comic, whatever, the predecessor is always better than the sequel most times, because it's hard for people to replicate the success that the predecessor have. But Sly 2 instead perfected what Sly 1 couldn't perfect, and with that, it made it a much better game for every single PlayStation 2 fans out there. Not just Sly Cooper fans, but PlayStation 2 fans in general. And it is with that, guys, that we are done with reviewing Sly 2 Band of Thieves. What's your guys' opinion on this game? Is this the greatest PlayStation 2 game of all time? Is it overrated to you guys? Let me know your opinions in the comment section down below, and I'll get to them as quick as I can. And as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It's your boy Sly Lancy, and I'll catch you guys next time. The next time we're covering Sly will be Sly 3, Honor Among Thieves. And boy, that one's going to be a very interesting game to talk about, because I do have a lot to say about that one. So I'll see you guys then. Hopefully, it should be out by late October, early November. I got to see where I'm at. But that's as far as I'm concerned, guys. I'll catch you guys later. And go outside and play.